Hey everyone, Margarita here. I want to talk in this video today about how my mother has been getting away with this is just one section of the crimes, but she has gotten away with stealing my dad's assets, all of them, and moving them into trust for herself in the past 2.5 years since my dad's injury. And she's also been getting away with stealing payments from my trust fund for about 20 years. She was gaining access to it, and the last several years, she's been attempting to gain access to what's left of it, using numerous different people and agencies to try to deem me mentally incompetent or have me locked up in jail long term or deceased. And that would be how she would gain access to the rest of these funds. So, at the root of all this, she has also been getting away with numerous counts of attempted murders, and poisoning many batches of food, especially with my dad and I both, and my kids. And she does this with other individuals as well. There are triggers to all of this, but the majority of the poison batches of food were for myself and my dad. So for me, because I bought my first home at 18, I've been removed from the majority of these batches of poisoned food. However, this was going on my entire life. And I did confront her around age 3 or 4 about this. And she knew from that point forward that I was aware she was doing this. So that was before this trust fund was left for me. And from that point forward, she was already lying to people about me, making up lies and delusions, spreading a false narrative about me, and growing it over the course of time with her hundreds of family members, friends, neighbors, coworkers, whoever she's ever talked to. Everything out of her mouth has always been lies and delusions. She did this so nobody would ever believe me, because she knew that I was aware she poisoned food all the way back then as a small child, and nobody was ever going to believe a little kid. She would even say those words directly to me, threatening me every time I threatened to tell on her. So that is where the false narrative started and where she grew it from. Around 1989 is when the trust was left for me. And so this is a couple years after I had confronted her about the poisoned food. And that's where the situation exacerbated from there and multiplied with how heavily she was telling lies and the type of lies, and grew it even further and heavier from that point forward to where we are today in 2025. Because where we are today, these lies and delusions all about me are still going on with every person she's ever known. Now, because I cut ties at 18 and went my separate way and cut ties with all of her family members and all these people who she's spreading this false narrative to, no one had any contact with me or knew anything about me. I've also kept my life off of social media and off of the internet until releasing these videos. There was no information about me out there. So that also helped allow that false narrative to grow even further and continue on way longer than it ever should have. And if I had been using social media the way people do, for the last 5 or 10 years or so, this information most likely would have already gone public with what's all gone on. The crimes would already be exposed, because my real life would have spoken for itself if I had used social media the way everybody else does. Because technically at this point, with everything I've done along the way, I would have already been social media famous. People would know who I am, and it would have exposed everything a long time ago. Part of the reason I never use social media is because of the long-term ongoing harassment due to my mother's criminal actions and all these people and agencies she's been using to harass me along the way before social media. That is why I chose to never use it. That is part of the reason I had to keep my life private, because there was all these chaotic disasters along the way without that. And I already have lots of jealousy and envy with her, other people, other situations not even related, all along the way. So I thought it was best to stay off of social media. Now, looking back on it, I probably should have used it. It would have exposed this a long time ago. It could have possibly changed the outcome of my life. But can't turn back the hands of time, and I am speaking out now about all of this. So also, once I became injured in 2016, 2018, I would have never been able to do the social media thing either due to how severely injured I was. I remained in an extreme fight for my life, unable to string sentences together, unable to do basic daily tasks for years on end. And it wouldn't have been possible for me to incorporate that into my life either. So those are some of the key points to all of this. But when this trust fund was left for me, that's where these lies and delusions spread even further. Every person she's ever known got their information about me directly from her. Nobody ever spoke to me directly or got the information from me directly. Some of the things she would say would be half truths, which would then make everything she's saying look real. So even her closest family members who think that they know me don't actually know me. I literally don't have contact with any of these people, and I haven't for decades. So those people, they really truly believe that they know me as a person and have all this information about me. None of that's real either, because all of those people got their information from my mother every step of the way as a small child and then growing forward. So right from the day that this trust was left for me, my mother never had any intention of ever notifying me of it from day one. She took those stipulations regarding how it would be her that would have access to it if I was deceased or deemed mentally incompetent or incarcerated. And she tried her hardest to make sure one of those things happened to me from that point forward. So there's been many different sets of circumstances all along the way where she tried to make that happen, and it's been ongoing for decades. It's never stopped. So clearly she has this irrational belief that this trust fund that does belong in my possession, that she should have it instead of me. At no time was she ever going to notify me of it, and had no intention ever of even giving it to me, not even 1%. So literally from that day forward, that's where the lies and delusions got extremely exacerbated. Like I said, right when she came out of the room, she lied to my dad about what it was that was left for me. And then from that point forward, she created so much destruction, chaos, and confusion that nobody was ever remembering anything. And that's when she started farming the delusions with all of my teachers, calling them all from the background, portraying me to look like this terrible kid. And she had to do that because where she was taking it to was down the line. She had planned on having me deemed mentally incompetent one way or another. Now, that went on the entire time I stayed in school until she managed to get me kicked out of school. And she tried two really good attempts. There was a false situation that happened where she had called, which I believe was in the year 2000. And she attempted to get the school officer to believe that I threatened to blow up the school. And she almost succeeded at this, except for the fact that I had somebody with me, and neither one of us understood any of why we were being questioned. And it seemed very odd. We both seemed very confused because what she had told the lady was none of what we were talking about or none of what was going on. And then my dad even confirmed it later that day when I spoke to him. He was aware that she had called and said something along those lines. There was one teacher that year who picked up on the fact that there was something seriously wrong. And she knew that my mother was the problem because this teacher chose not to participate in her little escapades. So it did not work that year, but the following year with her other escapade and trying to have me deemed mentally incompetent using a psychiatrist and her controlling the flow of information with her as well, and being able to get me given some pills that I never needed in the first place. Again, that lady diagnosed me on all of this false information my mother gave her and gave me these pills, and that's what ended up getting me kicked out of school. So I do have the intake paperwork from that visit, which very clearly show that I'm a hardworking teenager, making full-time money already at 16 years old with a plan to leave and never look back. You can tell by what the paperwork says that at no time does it indicate a mental disorder of any kind. So I have pictures of it. I actually burned the papers, but I have pictures of that paperwork. So it continued on from there. Now, because I was 16 at the time that occurred, she did slip in a psychiatric evaluation trying to prove that I'm mentally unstable or something along those lines. And I'm not sure what exactly came of that, or if those papers were ever used at any point to help her gain access to this money. I'm thinking possibly not. It didn't have what she wanted it to say, is what I'm thinking, because it showed that I was extremely intelligent. But she gave them to me at some point shortly after that. So it makes me think that she may not have been able to use what was given to her. However, I could be wrong. She very well could have taken those papers, or because she worked in the medical system all those years, she may have used those papers along the way, falsified some papers, or got somebody else to. And I do believe the Brownstown Police Department may be involved in writing some false statements for her, or verifying some things about me that were never real, just by her telling them, or by offering them bribery payments. So I'm not sure if that actually ties in or not, but the Brownstown Police Department did participate long term in all of the ongoing crimes and the things she did to help gain access to the trust fund fraudulently over the course of time. So that went on long term. I wasn't aware that the trust even existed at that point. I was living in so much chaos. I had already planned on leaving and getting my first home. That's why I had been working since age 14. At 18, I bought my first home, had been at the same company for 2 years, stayed there almost 5 years. At that point, I cut all ties, walked in the opposite direction, and didn't ask for anything from my parents, knew my dad was not going to leave my mother, even though at that point he had basically been believing everything she had been telling him about me every day. She would just repeat delusions to him all through me growing up, all the time. And that continued on. It's still going on today, even though he's injured, he's at a care facility. It's been going on all along. It's never stopped. She's been doing that since I was a small child. So when I cut ties and left at 18, he still had a twisted view of who I was as a person, because here all along the way she'd been controlling the narrative about me, repeating things to him that were never real. And he just was never mean to me about it. He would neurologically flip and cause some issues along the way, but nothing the way she did. And you could tell that he had just believed everything she had been saying all along, not realizing she's repeating delusions. And I do have several sets of proof of this in the more recent past. In the past, like 5 years or so, I have a couple sets of proof that that is what she's been doing, although I've known all along that's what she's been doing. So when it comes to the trust fund that was left for me, she did attempt to try to use Child Protective Services back in 2005 and tried to get that lady to remove my kids from my care and bring my kids directly to her. However, it did not work. A, because she didn't even show up in court. She just told this lady false information. That lady repeated it in court, and the judge said that's all hearsay. The person who gave you the information isn't even here. And she really believed that this woman was just going to bring her my kids and that I shouldn't be having these kids, which didn't make any sense. I had been gainfully employed since age 16. At that point, I had been in my home that I owned for 3 years, and that's just not how things work. So she's clearly in a delusional state of mind. And I believe it was shortly after that, and she wasn't able to actually get custody, that she somehow got other family members, friends, or certain agencies to write notarized letters and or show up in person to the private attorney's office holding the trust fund, and got them to state that she has always had custody of my older 2 kids and that she raised them. And she did this because we kept a separate relationship with my dad the entire time. He would just come to my houses and she wasn't allowed. And there was no relationship between her and me all along the way. But by having the contact with my dad, she was using my dad to grab my kids whenever there would be this event or that family function or whatever is going on. She would use my dad to get my kids and present them in public at certain places, to make it look like her false narrative was true, that she had had custody of and raised these kids. And she would just present them from time to time, and it made it look real. In the background, she'd be calling people by herself with nobody around while my dad was at work. And she would tell people this whole false narrative. She kept it growing over the course of all this time. And then telling people that she has custody of them, she raised them, and I'm just this hot mess running around town somewhere, dumped my kids off long ago. and that she's the one taking care of them. And then she would use my dad to get them in her possession and present them from time to time. So when these people would see her or see her with my kids, they believed it to be real. So at some point, I believe they either wrote notarized statements or showed up in person and verified that, yeah, she's always had custody, even though none of that's real. It was all an illusion she pulled. I've always had custody of all my kids. They've always all lived with me. So I don't know exactly when that happened. I would say after the 2005 incident when CPS was not able to hand her my children. And from that point forward, even then, that lady had pulled me in the hallway and threatened me, all on the delusions that that lady was told about me. Just believing that the mother's always right and what the mother is saying is real, even though this is a deranged lunatic with nothing but lies and delusions, which she's had been doing for a couple decades at that point. So I'd say it was after that time period where she then got these people to back up her having custody of my kids. And that's how she gained some access to this trust fund, which I believe happened for about 20 years. Once those two older kids were approaching age 18, she knew she was going to lose access to this trust fund, and there was still money left in it. And I did have the younger child that was born in 2016. However, I knew from 2013 on, from her escapade in 2013, that that child would never have a relationship with her and he would not be allowed to go over there. So here and there, she was able to get a picture of him here or there. She was always trying to sneak in pictures of all of my kids to help back up this false narrative, which she did with my older kids as well. But I caught on before that child was born, and I made sure that we tried to pull him from any pictures she may have taken. But so he's never had a relationship, and she knew that she wasn't going to be able to use him to gain access to this money the way she did the other two. And once it was approaching, those older two were getting to be about age 18. That's when she started using other individuals in large agencies and paying people and bribing people to cause problems in my life, try to get charges put on me fraudulently, or have people insert themselves in my life and gather information on me, or have people try to do things so that I would do something stupid to get myself arrested, so that I would spend time in prison. And that's what she was attempting to do once those two older kids were approaching age 18. So I do have numerous sets of proof of everything that I'm saying that will back up the bigger picture of everything that's gone on all along the way. It didn't work. And also, she had already done an attempted murder on my life as well and was already caught in the act at this point. I do believe she thought that if I were deceased or if I was gone, that she would automatically get custody of my youngest child, which that's not what would happen to him. So she's clearly in a delusionary state, especially with there being no relationship and this child is not allowed anywhere near her. I have matters already set up. The child owns the home I have with me. He stays with my home, especially if I'm deceased, because I am living with a serious life-threatening condition. It's already set up that way. He stays with the home. The life insurance pays it off. The child stays with the home, and whoever I designate stay in the home with him, it wouldn't be her. She would have nothing to do with that child. So I'm not sure if she truly thought in her delusionary frame of mind that that's what was going to happen, but there was already an attempted murder on my life where she was caught. Again, the Brownstown police refused to investigate. Numerous times I made numerous reports, and they made those reports disappear from their system. The majority of those reports I made, even though there is a little bit of proof that I made those reports, they didn't clean up their evidence of getting rid of it 100%. So I do have some proof that that is what is going on top of the witnesses that saw it. Now, long term, yes, my mother has been poisoning batches of food, and that's been going on all along. And it is part of the Munchausen by proxy to create extreme physical pain and suffering, along with mental and emotional pain and suffering. She creates all of them, but she really likes to create physical pain and suffering. So my effects from the poisoned food do cause a significant amount of suffering, because it is like having heartburn, but it's not heartburn, it's the poison, which is why it feels that way. But like I said, this poison has been removed from my life for a very long time. There's been very few periods of time where she has managed to get me to ingest it using other people or different situations along the way. So I'll get into the poison batches of food in its own episode. Long term, she's also done that to my dad as well, all along the way. He even admitted it numerous times over the course of the last couple decades to me, has admitted it once I brought it up to him. And long term, causing him to have long term issues as well, causing some suffering. He did have a long term history of urinary tract infections, which have been exacerbated since his injury 2.5 years ago, which is what was causing the septic shock incidences since his injury, where he kept getting rushed back to the hospital. There's a whole clear pattern of them since his injury, at least 15 times, maybe more, where he was repeatedly rushed back to the hospital, and it was causing him to be in septic shock, come near death, and it was due to the poison batches of food. But those poison batches of food were going on all along the way. So those urinary tract infections that would lead to the septic shock, those were going on long term, way before his injury. There's also a medical history with his primary doctor of repeated visits for those. Now, because I am poisoned by carbon monoxide at a systemic level, and I have a very extreme case, and I've also been dealing with a mother that poisons batches of food my entire life, I'm very knowledgeable on systemic toxicity and poisonous substances within the body. So I have a little more knowledge than the average person ever would regarding those matters. So when it comes to my dad's symptoms, because he was never removed from my mother, being around my mother and her food the way I removed myself all that time, he was still experiencing these symptoms long term prior to his injury and after his injury. But what I'm saying is, all along the way, there are signs of this going on all along the way. Based on what I know, and the knowledge that I have regarding systemic toxicity and poisonings, along with what I've seen him go through and how I know what triggers her to do this and cause these incidences to happen to him, where he'd then go visit his primary doctor. This was prior to his injury. So there is a clear pattern with his primary doctor. I could even line up what situation happened when, if you were to get his primary doctor's records from before his injury. And then I could also line up the circumstances after the injury from that point to today in the last 2.5 years, and when she was doing this, and what was causing these triggers, because she has like emotional or social triggers, like it's jealousy and envy triggers is what it is that cause her to do that. So there's a very clear pattern all along the way. With me, yes, I'd remove myself, although she did manage to get me a handful of times here and there. My dad was still being poisoned regularly all along. There are numerous ways that I can point out how this was going on, but what I do believe is that she intended on making sure neither one of us would be here anymore. And I do believe she was trying to get rid of us all along the way. And I don't think she expected us to still be here at this point. I think she expected us to be gone some time ago. But what she didn't realize is, once I got my first home at 18, my dad was coming to my house after work, and he was eating dinner at my house because I always cook dinner and I don't poison food. So long term, there was many dinners that were removed from him ever eating. Once he became injured, I spent the first 15 months almost every night there with him. I also made sure he was not ingesting this, and if he did, then I saw the signs settling in. Even though I don't know what the substance is, I'll talk about that when I get to that video. But we don't know what the substance is. I do believe it's more than one substance, but I'd recognize the signs that it was settling in, and I do know how to reverse some of it. So that's what I would do. Since his injury, I'd be able to reverse some of it. And then she didn't know I was removing some of the poison batches of food from him ever ingesting them after his injury as well. So all along the way, there's periods of time where she probably thought we were ingesting these batches of food, and we actually weren't, and she's unaware that we did not ingest them a good percentage of the time, where he or she thought we were the whole time. So long term, yes, she had planned on getting rid of us prior to what's been going on recently. She tried heavily once I became severely injured in 2018. That's where she nearly caused my death with the apple pie incident. That was very intentional. That was the plan. It was very calculated. So I already released a video regarding that a few months ago and what happened in that situation. But with my dad, it had been going on all along as well. Now, with my dad's situation, it is provable what has all gone on. So if you watch some of my other videos, I already exposed some of this information in some of the other videos, that she did not have a proper power of attorney signed for my dad. He wasn't even aware he signed it. I have numerous sets of proof that he didn't know he signed it because he wasn't in a place to. When she did that, she also slipped in a quitclaim deed for the house that they jointly own. He also did not know he signed that. And then she used that same attorney who was the notary in the situation to move all of this stuff into trust for herself, I believe, which is Jamie Fergus of Shea Law, who I did reach at one point by phone. But I can tell based on the results of what happened after the phone call, or the lack of results, that she believed whatever delusion she was told about me and continued to operate on my mother's behalf. So that woman then helped her move that house into trust for herself. Her name is on the paperwork. So after she got the quitclaim deed signed in October of 23, it was about a month later. Then my mother then moved it into trust for herself using that same attorney. And I do believe that's also the same attorney she used when she stole my dad's 401k a couple months after that. So January of 24 is when my mother got away with stealing my dad's 401k funds. Matter of fact, they had a fight about it. It was either one night or two nights prior to her attempting to murder him. He was already in the hospital from the long-term care facility from one of her batches of poison foods, which had been going on repeatedly since his injury. All these different times it kept happening. He was already there from it, and they had a fight about the amount of money that was in the 401k, and she expected it to be several $100,000, whereas there was under $100,000 in the 401k. I'm not sure where she got this estimated number that she thought it should be, but I do believe she began telling people that he had been giving me money and paying my bills all along the way, which was never true. I've never gotten any money from my dad. He's never paid any of my bills. I don't know why the number in the 401k is what it is, or if that's what it was supposed to be, or I don't know the circumstances behind it. I just know it was under 100 grand. This was all information he told me directly right before she attempted to murder him the next day, and about the fight and what the fight was about and the amounts of the money. And you could tell that she was very pissed off, that it was a lower number. She expected it to be much higher, and that she was just very irritated with having to take care of him, and that this was just dragging on and on and on. His injury being so significant, him still not being home, her having to come take care of him, which she actually wasn't doing the majority of the work. The care facility is doing the majority of the work. And I was there almost every evening. I was there more than she was, until she eventually gained control over the false narrative about me, pushed me out of the way, spread all these lies and delusions to all these family members and friends, and made it look like I was off running around in Ohio the entire injury. Not that I was there with him every night, which I was the first 15 months of his injury, there almost every night. So she had lied to everybody, taken credit for all the work I had done, but at the same time, she was getting mad that this was just dragging on, and she just didn't want to deal with it anymore, and just figured she better just finish him off, get rid of him. And then the next day, after having the fight, that's when she attempted to do that. He did go unresponsive. They did have to bring him back to life. Whatever poison she uses, the effects are delayed, as I already know that is how this works. And they did have to bring him back to life. That is how he ended up blind. Now, 10 days after that is when she moved his 401k into trust for herself using that same attorney who helped get the fraudulent document signed. And he was intubated and unconscious for a couple months. He had no clue that had even happened. And she's the one who actually told me, because I had been doing their taxes since 2009. When I was doing them that year, she's the one who slipped up and told me herself that she did it. I already knew she wasn't supposed to be touching the money, and she didn't know he told me all about their fight right before she attempted to murder him. And then long term prior, in the beginning of his injury, when he was still fully with it, I had taken many pictures of the texts between them. She was saying mean, nasty things to him that were inappropriate for the situation and the injury. And I already did a video where I released a video on all the inappropriate messages between the two of them. And it specifically says, from him to her, I had my money, you have yours, you had yours. So, and then the other conversations prove that she wouldn't have ever had power of attorney, because she doesn't know anything about their finances or what's going on financially. You can tell by the messages that I would have been the better option, which also backs up how her power of attorney is false and that mine was always the legit one, even though nobody ever investigated properly. The proof is in those texts. So at no time should her hands have ever been on that 401k, on top of the fight they had that she didn't know he told me about. So the information is all there. There is proof of all of this. And he didn't come to for a couple months to fully understand that she stole all of that money. And coming out of the extreme part of that and starting to come back is when I had gotten the attorney or the notary involved and brought the documents to get power of attorney signed. And my notary spoke with my dad about that stolen 401k, and he directly told her that no, I didn't give her permission to do that. You can tell by the dates he was fully not with it at all. He was completely intubated and unconscious the entire time. So there's proof every step of the way of what she did. And it wasn't just that time. There was all these other near deaths that happened prior to that incident. That was a year into his injury when that occurred. But there was all these other times where he did come near death, and it was from her poison batches of food. So everything that happened regarding my dad's stolen assets, it's all provable that they are stolen. This was all done fraudulently. And then she tried to have false fraud charges put on me using the Brownstown Police Department. And they are involved in the crimes long term as well. And they are involved in this matter as well, in the criminal actions of this matter. And so none of this is reportable to the degree that I need it to be, because all of these local police departments are involved in the crimes with her. So that's why she was trying to have false fraud charges on me. Not only that, if you watch the video with Detective Mike Ramsey, he was promising her false fraud charges on me. Well, that you can kill two birds with one stone. You get rid of him, you take his assets, and then you get rid of me. You can lock me up long term, and then they would have access to the rest of my trust fund, is what she was going for, what they were all going for. They were all in on it together. And then she took those fake papers from the Brownstown Police Department down to the probate court. So these are two separate videos. You'd have to watch the Detective Mike Ramsey video. There's two parts to that. And then you'd have to watch Rico probate court plays out fraudulently. So that was all done fraudulently as well, where there's the guardian ad litem, Mohammed Bazi, and adult protective services worker Megan Kinder also participated in all of that to help get me locked up, because that's what Detective Ramsey was telling her. As long as she got custody of him, then I would be locked up. So it was all on at the root. They're going to steal my dad's assets, which she has. She has gotten away with stealing all these assets to this day without proper investigation. Nobody's looking into any of my reports, and then trying to get me locked up for something I actually didn't do. And I have the proof of everything every step of the way, but nobody's investigating because they're all in on the crimes. So if you watch all of those videos, it will show everything. I've already talked about it and showed the proof in the videos. Now with me, she has gotten away with all of this. She's gotten away with all these delusional phone calls, all this criminal harassment, all these repeated wipeouts in my life as I'm building my life. Complete wipeout, start over from nothing, rebuild, complete wipeout, start over from nothing, complete wipeout. It's happened 3 solid times, and a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. That's what she's done since the time I was 18. And it's to help her false narrative about me look true, so she can portray to people, hey, see, she's so mentally unstable. See, she's so financially unstable. That's why I've had custody of these kids. See, she never went to college. See, look at her. She can't maintain her home. She can't pay the payments. She's delusional as fuck, because all she did by doing that was tell on herself some more. At no time was I ever financially unstable. I've been extremely financially stable from the time I was 16 years old. That's how I managed to hold on to everything and rebuild after each wipeout and still be where I am after everything I've been through, and spending several years near death fighting for my life and paying almost 200 grand out of pocket for treatment. So she looks extremely delusional, trying to portray me to look financially and mentally unstable. But that is the reason for that, so she can make that false narrative that she's grown over the course of all that time look true, which is how she gained access to the trust. And then she's got all these people trying to cause problems in my life as well, while she's still over here attempting to gain access to what is left. So because this went through a private attorney's office, no, I don't know what office that is. That is the only piece of information I don't have. However, it does need to be found. I know there is family members, friends, people who know my parents, who do know of this trust. I know she hasn't just kept it silent all along, because she does like to brag about certain things Just like how she's bragging about how she raised my kids. And that's funny because she's never even taken them to school or picked them up ever a day in her life. I did all of that all of those years. So when she does stuff like that, I know that she's said this to at least one or two people out there. And just telling them, hey, she was left this trust fund, but she's such a hot mess. She's so mentally disordered. She never went to college. I raised those kids. Oh, that money belongs to me. You best believe she has said this to at least one or two people, if not more than that, bragging to people about it. So I know there's people who know about this trust or the attorney's office who holds the trust. So I do need that information. If somebody knows that information, my email address is in the description box of every video individually, not on the main page of the YouTube channel, but it is individually in each video. So I'm looking to gather that information so I can bust the rest of this open. I am in need of those funds. The private center I've been treating at all along is permanently closed, and I cannot receive proper treatment within the medical system due to my mother's ongoing crimes and the falsification of my medical records. So the only way for me to treat going forward and seal shut the rest of the brain tissue that's wide open is to upgrade my chamber system. The one I have will remove exposures that I have, but it's not going to seal the brain tissue shut in any type of manner that I need it to. I could treat every day for the next 40 years, and it's not going to have me where I need to be. So I do need an upgraded chamber system for my home. It does cost over $30,000, and it looks like that's the only way I'm going to be able to get that at this point. However, this money belonged in my pocket over 20 years ago. I have been self-made, self-built, 100% self-made all along. Been 100% self-employed since 2012. Been self-employed even longer. I was gainfully employed all along. At no time have I ever been financially unstable. Those are all delusions. Her trying to tell people I've never had a good job, which I don't know why people believe that, because the different lines of work I've been in my whole life, those are all high-paying lines of work. So I don't know why people would even believe her in the first place regarding that matter. It doesn't add up. But apparently people do believe her. And it doesn't make any sense. Either way you look at it, I've lost over $3 million due to all of these wipeouts, this criminal harassment, all these actions she's taken against me, all these agencies and people harassing me, causing problems. That's how much I've lost directly of money that I've personally made in my life, not including this trust fund, nothing to do with the trust fund. That's what I've personally lost. And it can all be verified and lined up from what I've been building every step of the way, that's what's been lost. So there is a separate video on that where I talk more about that. Because I'm permanently injured, permanently disabled for the rest of my life, there's no way to pick up the pieces and rebuild in the manner in which I have. I may be able to hold on and make it all flow, but it's not going to be any type of quality of life that I deserve to have. I've never had any quality of life. I've never even gotten to live my life. I've never had free will. The entire time I've lived in chaos my entire life, walking on eggshells, living in survival mode, with a deranged lunatic and a whole bunch of people causing problems in my life from behind the scenes every step of the way while having no contact with this deranged lunatic. And that's caused all these serious issues all along the way, which has prevented me from ever being able to live my life. Now, the past 7.5 years, well, really 9.5 years, I've been injured from the carbon monoxide poisoning and the brain injuries both. And at this point, I do have 5 brain injuries where we are today. That's why I stumble a lot when I talk, and I have better days, I have worse days. There's a lot of problems with all that. I've never had speech therapy. I had to struggle to learn how to talk again with everybody in my household screaming her delusions at me while she was pumping up people around me full of delusions, the people around me not believing that I was as injured as I was or that I am as injured as I am in the current day. And they all continued on with their lives as if that's not what's going on, and that's still going on today. So for all these more recent years, I've been that injured all along, and it's caused extreme disaster, extreme destruction, to where I'll never live a regular life no matter what. But if I had the proper chamber system, I would be able to at least take steps to piece things together a little further down the line and carry out the rest of my business plans if I had the money that's rightfully owed to me. So all along the way, I've been building business for decades. This money belonged to me 20 years ago, and not $1 ever belonged in her pocket. She does not know how to do what I do. She was intending on running off to California, living her fake rich life without having to work for any of it, and portraying herself to just live this rich lifestyle without ever having to work hard ever in her life, when she took it all from my dad and took it all from me, when I've 100% worked for everything I have without help from anybody, and my dad 100% worked for everything he's had, which she has now all taken from him, while she's attempting to take what's left from me for her. So, another piece to this puzzle, once I became injured in 2018, once I was near death, she did make sure that I did not receive treatment within the medical system, and then began falsifying mine and my younger son's medical records. That was her intent, was to make sure I did not survive the injury. And if I was not who I truly was, and had built my life to where I had, and made the money that I truly make, and been doing what I've been doing all along, we wouldn't have survived that injury. We wouldn't have made it past 2019. The intent was to kill. What she miscalculated is that I really am the person that I've been all these years, and that I paid for my own treatment out of pocket at a private facility, spending almost 200 grand out of pocket. She did not take that into consideration, because she does not want people to believe that I am who I really am, and she doesn't want to believe that herself. So if it weren't for that, no, we wouldn't have survived it. But her initial intent was to kill so she could collect the rest of what was owed from that trust fund, and then it would go to her if I was no longer alive. So with that, that is what she did. And then there was the attempted murder, where she was caught in the act, and then she was confronted by Charmaine in her office as well. And she was caught in the act, and I do have a witness. And also the Brownstown police tried to delete all of these reports that I made on all this, refused to investigate repeatedly, and did nothing about any of this, because they're involved as well. So all of this ties together. She has been getting away with decades of very serious crimes. So I have released some of those crimes in a different video already. This is just one of those crimes. Well, it's a string of crimes, but long-term, been getting away with stealing the assets of me and my dad, everything we've worked for, and then trying to take the trust fund, which she still has no intent of ever notifying me. Still, that's illegal right there. Just her refusing to notify me. That's what you sign up for. You have a fiduciary duty to notify the person, which has never been done. And at this point, I'm not sure why the attorney's office is not attempting to find me directly. However, she lies so good, and people don't see who she really is as a person. So they very well could just believe the delusion she's told them about me, and wouldn't believe me to own a house with how she's portrayed me. So that could explain why I've never received anything in the mail. Or she could just be telling them I'm off running the streets somewhere, I'm nowhere to be found, I'm not contactable, the mail goes to her house, or something along those lines. But I haven't had her address since I moved out at age 18 for numerous reasons. She does go through the mail as well, and cause problems in that manner. So I do believe that they believe I'm this hot mess off running the street somewhere, and I'm just unreachable, which is why they wouldn't be looking for me. They're not aware that I am who I really am, and at no time has anything that she's ever said about me been real. So those are all factors involved in all of that. But yeah, this money does belong in my pocket. It should have never gone on this long. All of these people have been helping her every step of the way. Every person who believes the false narrative plays a role in this. Every person who's inserted themselves in my life, all these agencies, all these people have played a role in the criminal actions of making sure I do not receive this trust fund. It's all just extremely absurd, and it does belong in my possession immediately. So I will be back with more on the poison batches of food, and then the jealousy and envy over me being born, and where all of this started, and how she's a fake nice person, and the person that she portrays to the rest of the world isn't who she truly is as a person. She's actually a deranged lunatic, a narcissist who creates a lot of reactive abuse situations behind the scenes to make it look like I'm the one with the problem. That's been going on from the time I was a small child. I just did not have the words to ever describe that to anybody, nor did I ever have anybody to turn to tell this to. So I know all these people out here are probably viewing this video, and they're thinking, oh, she's such a sweet, nice lady. Oh, she's such a good person. Oh, she did this and that. No, that's a fake person. The person that she shows the rest of the world, the person that she shows her family, that's not who she really is. She's a deranged lunatic, an extreme narcissist, who creates a lot of problems with Munchausen by proxy, a lot of reactive abuse situations, and she's been doing it all along. So the person she's always been to me from the time I was born is not the person that she is to all these people, where she presents this false personality with this wearing this mask. That's not a real person at all. That's not at all who she is. So I know a lot of people are going to say, oh no, she's so great. No, I just had to throw that in there. No, she's not. So I will be back with more on those other videos to talk more about that and go further into depth about all of that, because I can bring up specific situations where I do remember, where it might have looked that way to the other person watching, and how she made it look that way, and how she kept repeatedly doing this over the course of time. So I'll get more into that in the future videos, but I just had to get this one video out so so that this can be put out there. Everyone can be put on notice. This trust needs to be returned to me immediately. I'll be back with more. Thanks. Bye.